Hi, I want to welcome everybody to the March 2024 meeting of the Parrot Club. We're very excited tonight to have Dr. LoraKim Joyner of One Earth Conservation talking about sun parakeet conservation in Guyana, and sun parakeets are more commonly known to us as sun conures. Dr. Joyner is co-director and board president of One Earth Conservation, a nonprofit which promotes parrot well-being in the Americas by conducting transformative parrot conservation, taking action to end the wildlife trade, and encouraging in people a strong sense of human connection to all life that results in the well-being of all. She's both an avian veterinarian and an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister with certification in nonviolent communication. She has directed and led a number of parrot conservation projects in South America and is a former director of Lefebvre Conservation. She is currently acting secretary for the Parrot Researchers Group. I just have to say that I first saw Dr. Joyner talk at a foster parrots event a number of years ago, and I thought she was a fabulous speaker. And I've been wanting to have her talk to us for a long time. She's been on my wish list, so I'm very happy that we finally made this happen tonight. So without further ado, I will turn the mic over to you, Dr. Joyner.
Thanks, Amy, and the Parrot Club for wanting to hear about sun parakeets. This is so much fun, and so I hope you guys get a lot out of it, and you can be as frustrated as we are about these birds because so little is known about them. So I'm actually going to womp some science on you guys, sharing some of what we know so far. And I'm especially grateful for foster parents folks being here as well. In case you all don't make it to the final slide with all the logos and the thank you, it's all foster parents / Karen's fault that I'm working in Guyana. So thank you so much for that. And I mean that seriously, all joking aside. So let's just start doing the pretty pictures, shall we? Okay, we're all good. We're seeing that.
All good.
All good. Oh, excellent. Okay. All righty. I am the chattering parakeet, but actually there's a whole bunch of people who actually do the work all the time, every month, and certainly all our funders, and that includes foster parrots and private donors, and thank you all. So I'm just a parakeet chatting about what's going on down there. And so why the sun parakeet? Well, I think we know that they're in the endangered status. And how endangered are they? Well, there's a lot more of them in captivity than there are in the wild. We run about 200 to 400 in Guyana, and on the other side of Brazil, they haven't actually done a count, but it could be like 1,000. And I saw, Amy, you put in some statistics over there as well about what we think is there. Where in Guyana there used to be tens of thousands of them there. The people tell me when they were children they like if they covered the sky. There was so much of that yellow and orange flying over, and they've been reduced because of the wildlife trade. So where is that study area? Well, where do we work? So I don't have the whole South America map. So you guys, I'm going to just challenge your geography a little bit. So here's South America, and here's Suriname, and over here we have Brazil, and over here we have Venezuela. So we're in the country of Guyana here, and over here, right on the Brazilian border, is Karasabai. That is a village complex. There's actually several villages that are part of Karasabai, and that's the last place where the sun parakeet is. And they used to go like this, and maybe further north too. They used to be quite a larger range, and then they really extend into Brazil. The range is much longer. It was originally historically much longer in Brazil. So I'm just going to show you, well, what's the study? What were we doing? When we first went in there, we said, well, only 200 sun parakeets. Let's see what the indigenous people want to do. They're Makushi in this part of Guyana. What do they want to do? And they were already hot to want to preserve their parakeets because in the 1980s, they were down to zero birds. They were down to zero birds. and they thought they were gone forever from Guyana. And then they started to come back when the trafficking, they began to kind of tramp down on the trafficking. And but they weren't very many of them. Like, we would be excited to see 4 or 6. And so they said, we want to protect our parakeets. And so we said, okay, let's write some grants. Let's figure out these birds. Let's help make it a sustainable project. So this is what we did. How many birds are there? What's their nesting ecology? Because you have to know how they nest to be able to protect them from the trappers. What's the human impact? Because they wanted to set up ecotourism. So what are tourists going to, how that's going to impact them? And so this, the pictures just of some of our very first trainings teaching the local people how to count parrots. And please, if I'm talking too fast or not clear, Amy, your job is to stop me and ask me questions. Okay, so we did population counts. We just went everywhere where they were in Guyana, and it takes several days to do this. And we use this technique you can see in this book. And we did 2 full population counts in November of 2019 and 21, trying to use the same methodology. But we count all the species of parrots, not just the parakeets. And this is a system where we can remove the duplicates. So that was one of the things we did. And of course, you have to start off with training, overall parrot conservation. And here's Danica from Foster Parrots. And so we really tried to bring in the young people. And so we did our counts. And this is just showing you the area. This is a better map. So here's Suriname and French Guiana and Venezuela and Brazil. And this is the area where we did our counts. But we included other villages. We want to share the good news and share the work and share the employment. And so we did 8 different transects, which just means just a bunch of people in a row counting the parrots over a 10-day period. And what did we find? In 2019, we threw out our duplicates. We counted 406 individual sun parakeets, as best as we could guess. They weren't duplicate birds. That was a lot higher than anyone thought they would be. We repeated the same count 2 years later, and we already got 252. So what happened? We don't know. We don't know. We counted 2 weeks earlier in 2021. There was a series of very rainy years, so the flora changed, how the food and what the time and when things flowered. People were planting corn differently. The species is known, they call it a pest species in Brazil because it eats the corn. There's much more corn being planted on that side of the river than on the Guyana side. We also, no one's ever tagged them with satellite collars to know, but you just watch them and they're coming from a long distance away and they're going a long distance. They fly really high, and it doesn't surprise you that they can be 150 meters up and you can still hear them because they're so loud. And they can be 700 meters away, 150 meters up, and I can't hear them, but the parakeet rangers can hear them. So they're moving, but we don't know how much they move. But we're pretty sure they move fluidly between Guyana and Brazil. The river and the national boundary doesn't stop them; it stops us, but not them. So we don't know. Or was there a sudden trapping event during COVID and nobody was watching? We just don't know. It's worrisome because we just don't know enough about this. So our recommendations from doing those 2 full population counts was, well, we need to count every year, not just every 2 years. But the problem is that's really expensive. It takes a lot of time. So we haven't done that. We could repeat counts throughout the year at the local places. And now we're doing that. These rangers go out every month and they count at 2 to 4 places every month, which is much better than just once a year. So we're getting seasonal data and variations. And I can't give you that data yet because you were just kind of right in the middle of it. And then we can compare the numbers to rainfall and weather patterns. Haven't done that yet, but we want to know. Is that why they're moving? What's happening? Climate change. And we need to do this for decades because it's imprecise counting birds, counting parrots. So you really need to do it a long time to really know what the population's doing and going up. However, anecdotally, they see more birds every year, and they're now flying. Every once in a while, they'll see them actually fly over the village, and it's been decades since they actually flew over the village. So there's a sense that maybe why the numbers are lower is they're dispersing. There's only so many nest cavities. They're not all congregated in one safe area on the river, the Irene River, which is between Brazil and Guyana. And maybe they're just going out to the farms. And that's why we don't see so many, because they've dispersed. Again, we don't know. So what we decided to do was to just count more often throughout the year, whether it's rainy or not. So this is us coming back from one of our counts. You know, no matter what, you got to get out in that weather and count those birds. These are the rangers. This is our field truck that we rent when we're there. So another thing that we wanted to do is know their nest, right? Did you know that in the literature, nobody knew how these birds nested? There was no ecology data on their nest. There was no scientific, I mean, the indigenous people and the trapping people knew nest, but there was no documented history of a nest and how they nested and when they nested that we could find. So the rangers had to start from scratch. So we wanted to confirm a cavity. We hadn't done it. And so we were really trying hard. So here we are. They saw parakeets coming in and out of this cavity. And here's just a stick and a endoscope camera, a snake camera, like for plumbing, is on it, because they'd seen birds go in. And look at those 3 eggs. Man, we were so excited. Yes, yes, we've documented our first nest. And so I watched it that night just because we want to confirm what's going on. And who was in the cavity? It was a woodpecker, not the sun parakeets. So those were those lineated woodpecker eggs. And that nest, there's a wildfire problem. The top of that nest came down. So here you can see this here. So what did the parakeet rangers did? Okay, so they weren't sun parakeets, but they rescued the 2 chicks. These are the 2 woodpecker chicks. And they tied the cavity back up to a nearby tree. And the parents went back to those chicks, and those chicks fledged. And the rangers did that all, I know. And woodpeckers are predators of parakeets, but they saved them. And competitors, certainly, for the same cavities. So the nesting ecology, it was really working hard. Is where do they nest? How many cavities? When we started in 2019, we had no confirmed sun parakeet cavities. Okay, so no nest. We didn't know what is successful, how do they nest, and what are the threats. So here are the parakeet rangers going out for the day. They have to bike everywhere or boat to get out to these far areas where the birds nest. So the first few years, starting in 2020, was an intense search for cavities with camping, because you got to camp. And so you can just see that they're cooking and they're out camping. Watch the cavities once a month. My idea was it'd be like every other parrot project, where you just guard the nest 3 months out of the year, 4 months out of the year when there's chicks, because that's when poachers take, is they want to take the chicks and sell them. Well, we didn't know when they nested. And so we had to figure out, well, when do they nest? The poachers would tell us some things, but we heard the trappers, we heard all kinds of things. And so we had to learn, when do they nest? So we know when to hire the rangers to protect and when they should go out. So they went out to learn and started protecting nests. And so field observations, we try to be as scientific as we can. These rangers are incredible artists. We have cameras now too, but they also drew where the cavities are and which entrances they use. They fill out a sheet and they measure the tree. It's pretty standard parrot stuff. And here again, just all their field observations in their field notebook. So they do this every month. They've been doing this for over 3 years now. So here's some of the challenges that these parakeets caused for me and for them. One of the talks I have is these parakeets will drive you crazy because we don't understand them. We just don't. So one thing that they do is they nest and roost in the same cavity. Many species of parrots only go inside cavities during the nesting season. And some will spend the night throughout the year, but generally they don't. These birds roost inside cavities, not up in the canopy. And then what's worse is they nest and roost in the same cavity. They're spending the night, and then all of a sudden there's eggs. And then they change their roost cavities. They may be in this cavity one night, and then they're in a cavity another night, and then they just go away, and then they come back, and then they come back with 5, and then they go away with 7. And in that group, they'll have very young chicks, middle-aged juveniles, and older birds, and they're all sleeping together. And so you don't know when they go into a cavity whether it's an active nest or not. In other parrots, you just go, oh, the female spending the night in the cavity, they have eggs, it's the nesting season. Not so with this. The other thing is mixed age. So we don't know, we can't tell when chicks fledge because there's already young chicks, from the nest before. And then there's variable numbers of birds and ages. So here you can see this is a nest, a roost site. So you can see the adults. There's not much green. And here is a chick. It's not a really young chick. It's been out for a couple of months. So there we go with that. We don't know how to age them. I'm going to show you some pictures about how we don't know that. And some of you all who have sun parakeets, you're going to tell me how you age them. And then I'm going to tell you, well, you told me that, but then someone from Australia saw something different, and someone from Europe and Rosemary Lowe told me this. And so we just don't know. And then here's the other thing that these birds drive you crazy with. So they'll have eggs and chicks, and there'll be 10 adults in the cavity. Who are the parents? And then you watch them, and you'll have one female copulating with 2 males, and then they all go into the cavity. Or you'll have one male feeding 2 females, and they all go in the cavity. So other parakeets or other conures of this size, of the Aratingas, it's not well written in the literature, but they are similar, and they have what's called community breeding or communal breeding. They help cooperative breeding. All the birds help. Adults, young birds, related, not related, help out in raising of the chicks. And then every once in a while in some of these Parrot conures, there's extra pair couplings. So we don't know. We think that's what's going on with these birds because they're very similar to the size and the way they roost and nest in cavities, but it's not been proven in any Aratinga species yet. So we don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned. So as far as aging the birds, and again, people in the chat can tell us your experience. I'd love to learn them. So here's a bird. It basically looks like a brown-throated conure. It's still in the nest, kind of dull brown. And then they brighten up and they start getting yellow on their wings. And then they're much brighter, still got green on their wings. And here they are just, almost at the adult coloration, still some green. And here's the yellow. So that's how we call them. But we don't know how long it takes them to go from here to here or here to here. We don't know yet. Why don't we know that? Because they're moving cavities and numbers of birds. And, one night the juvenile will go sleep over in this cavity and the next night it's somewhere else. So we don't know who belongs who and who we're seeing. So we don't know how long this bird took to age. Or not yet, not with the technology that we have in the field. So here's the question. Why don't we just ask agriculturists? Because it's been raising these birds, breed quite well in captivity. Well, okay, so here is a chick, not weaned yet. Look at all the yellow and how bright that bird is. So this looks like a bird that's 6 months old in Karasabai in Guyana. This is a bird that's still just, I don't know, maybe like 6 weeks old. So we don't know. We don't know in the captive populations how much of them have mixed with the sulphur-breasted sun parakeet. They divided them into 2 species. So there's a group, down there in parts of Brazil and Suriname that are the other species. So we don't know what's going on. There are people who are doing genetics, and we're starting to do it in the field too, to try to figure out how do you age these birds? Maybe it's variable. Maybe it's one of those species where some nests come out very bright and others, take a long time. So in our first 3 years, we found, oh gosh, I think it was 30 some cavities. So, here I am just showing you that they're really on the river. So here's Brazil, here's Guyana, on the river. And here they are in a farming community, hanging out at the farming community. So it just kind of give you an idea of how many birds are in cavities. So we had 37 in those first few years. 15 of those cavities were just roost sites. We never saw chicks or eggs come out of them. 13 were possible nests. How come we didn't know they were for sure nests? because we didn't have cameras and we didn't know how to climb trees in those days. 3 probable nests and 6 were 100% sure. So it was really hard to confirm a nest in those first days. So 37 cavities. The average number of birds spending the night was about 5. They ranged from a pair up to 11 birds spending the night in a cavity. The adults were 1 to 7, and the range of juveniles were 0 to 7. So in one nest, we had 7 young birds in the cavity. Do they, more than one female, lay eggs? Were they juveniles that came from another cavity? Was it a sleepover? We don't know. So this is just showing you the number, that how many birds, how many juveniles. We had the number of chicks generally tends to be about 2 chicks. And even since we've been climbing nests, that seems to be what we see. We haven't seen nests with more than 3 birds fledged. That was one thought. We thought, well, there's probably 10 eggs in there. Some of the trappers told us that, but we haven't seen that yet. And a lot of cavities with 4. Don't know if those are related birds or not. Number of adults in cavity, more than 4. 21 of the cavities had more than 4 adults. So that shows you that there's, pairs aren't the only ones that are having chicks. We do see chicks in cavities with more than 2 adults. Okay, so the other thing is we try to figure out, when do they breed? Now, in the first years, remember, we couldn't climb the trees and to confirm whether there were chicks and at what age. And it's a little hard to hear the chicks because they have that really high voice. But basically what this graph is showing is that it looked like in those first few years of our for sure nest, they were like in almost every month, we knew we had eggs or chicks in the cavity throughout the year. And then possible and probable just means we weren't quite sure. But when we heard chicks, we were able to say for sure. And you can just see it looks like they're throughout the year. But we hadn't climbed trees yet, so we're a little cautious about that data, but that was just through observation. So what did we decide we needed to do after the first 3 years? Always adapt, change your conservation plan, always adapt. And so what we needed to do was look inside the cavities to see what was going on with them. And so that's been happening for over 1.5 years now. And I'll show you some of those pictures. Determine their nesting ecology, multiple pairs, how long do they take before they mature in the wild? What is their nesting success and failure rate? Even more important. How many are getting predated? How many nests are we losing to fires? How many are we losing to trapping? And we have not had trapping that we've documented since the first year. So that's working. The village has changed their cultural expectations and have tapped off the trapping in the area. Make a conservation plan, which is constantly adapting, and develop a binational plan, because we knew from our counts that our birds were being shared with Brazil. So if we're doing all this conservation work on the Guyana side and they go over to Brazil and get shot or trapped, we're losing birds to Brazil. So it has to be a binational plan. Okay, so this is what happened after we were able to figure out how to climb trees. So eggs or chicks, we were 100% sure we saw them, or they saw them, from January to September. And so you can see this is just really recently. So what's happening in October, November, and December? Remember, from our first few years, we were pretty sure we heard chicks in those years, but we wanted to confirm it when we were actually climbing. And so these other things that you're seeing here is just showing it was very suspicious that we also had chicks in October and December, and we definitely had mating from pairs, adult pairs. Well, actually, adults will mate with juvenile birds too that appear juvenile. So they really could be year round. It really does. We're not quite sure about November and December what's happening in there. It's a little weak, the data at that point. So here's just some pictures of all the birds that they've found. They've got really good at climbing. The U.S. Forest Service came and donated a week of professional climbers that teach these rangers how to climb. So you can just see all the various pictures, the eggs, I don't know, about 5 days old, and it's coming up on a week. And you guys can probably age these parakeets better than I can. Coming up to maybe 10 days here. 4 weeks, 4 weeks a little bit, 5 weeks maybe through here.
LoraKim, I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. You've been talking about these fellows that are called the Parrot Rangers. I was wondering before we go any further, if you could just tell us who the Parrot Rangers are, where they come from, why are they doing this? Do they get paid? That kind of a thing.
That kind of is a kind of important piece, isn't it? Um, the Parakeet Rangers are people who live in the village of Karasabai, and we have had women be part of that, but it tends to be the young men. And we have gotten some grants through the years that can pay them stipends. Right now, we do not have any grants paying for them, so it's all coming out of One Earth funding. And they are just people who showed up for the training and want to do the work. And they want to do the work. And so right now, we have enough money this year to pay for 6 of them to go out 10 days a month. And that competes with parents who have children, or Michelson, who's getting married in June, and that's not enough money. And so we lose our rangers for jobs. They need to go to Brazil to work on cattle ranches. So the young men grew up in the village that love parrots and want to protect them. And we give them some stipends to help them do that. And their primary language is Makushi. Their secondary language is a kind of a Creole Guyanese language, and their third language is English, which they learn in school, but it's not their first language. So we have some fun around that, trying to communicate. So here we are. They're just older, about ready to, 6, 7 weeks, about ready to fledge here. And this is closer to 6.5 weeks. And here they are, just wanting, they can fly at this point, but they're still hanging around their cavity being really young birds. We weren't sure how long it took them to fledge, but since we've been climbing, it looks pretty standard, like other parakeets, around 8 weeks, 7.5 weeks seems pretty standard, what we'd expect. What about other things we learned about nest failure and competition? These are yellow-naped Amazon eggs. So there's a lot of competition for cavities, toucans and pileated woodpeckers, some of the flycatchers, always going in and out of cavities, even when there are sun parakeets nesting in the cavity. So we do see egg loss, and we do see a lot of energy being spent by sun parakeets chasing off other birds. We don't know the true impact of those competitions. We just don't know. But we're slowly gathering data. So these parakeet rangers are the first people who can climb trees in Guyana to study parrots. They're the first ones. So they're not only curious about some parakeets. We just say climb in everything, because we don't know anything about the red and green macaws or the yellow crown. It said yellow nape, or the yellow crown parrots there. So here they are. Here's a nest of red and green macaws in one of really close to where the sun parakeets are. And then we actually have a project with another village in Rewa, which again, foster parrots was crucial for development of that project. And so the rangers went to a whole different kind of tree. And it was the first documented pictures of macaw nest in Guyana outside of trappers. So just kind of showing some of how they're using their expertise to climb trees. So since August 2022, they found 23 more active cavities. We're up over 60 right now of active cavities. So that's a lot of information about what we found. So all of these nests that they found, this village is very interested in ecotourism. Why is that? Well, one is they wanted income, because there's not really employment there. You have to leave the village for employment. 2, they want to support the conservation, so they need an income so they can go out and protect the parrots and study them. And 3, people come from all over the world to see these sun parakeets. It's the only place you can easily get a sun parakeet on your life list, or if you just really like the birds. Because on the Brazil side, it's indigenous territory and they won't let you in. So you can't do it in Brazil. And the sulphur-breasted parakeets is a different species technically, and it's really hard to get to those birds. So they get lots of people. Lots of people come in, and so they want to develop the ecotourism. And so we've helped them a little bit with that. Is, how many families are benefiting, how much income, how does tourism impact the birds? And then let's combine the conservation with the ecotourism plan for income for families and welfare for the birds. And COVID-19 just knocked it all out, knocked it all out. And they're just now coming back to getting tourists every week now. It's kind of back to what it was pre-COVID days. So we help with brochures that need refined and improved, that get them a Facebook page, helping them do their advertisement. Communication is tough. They finally got government Wi-Fi there, but it comes and goes, and it's hard for them to make reservations, but it's getting better. They built a lodge, so you can come, and it's just a short walk to where some parakeets are from here. Okay, on a completely different note, and these are not my slides, so I'm just going to tell you. I mentioned that the genetics. What's going on? Are they inbred because there's so few birds, or there's there more than one parent? All these questions we don't know. So there's a group, Robert Spitzer, who's now in Sweden. The parakeet rangers are collecting feces and eggshells and feathers to do this DNA analysis. And here's the really cool thing. They developed a technique where they could use degraded DNA. In other words, we're not climbing trees and taking blood and pulling feathers out of birds. So we have this. They're like going out and watching birds poop in the field or poop underneath the nest, and they collect it there, and they're able to get viable samples to understand the genetics of these birds. So these are just, if you're recording this, people can come back and take a clue about how the kind of methodology that they're doing. But collecting feces, and there's the rangers out there, sterilizing for collecting feathers that they find in the field, and then they store them. And this is about a year old, so they have a lot more samples, but they haven't processed any because it took them forever to get the permits to get them out of the country and into Europe. So they're being shipped to the lab in Sweden. So we really hope to get these results soon. And now that we're climbing trees, we can correlate what we're seeing in the field with what their DNA analysis is. So they want to look at the sex ratio in the population size, relatedness, inbreeding, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty exciting. This is a great project. If you know anyone who has money to support their own PhD program, it's beautiful, it's safe, we don't know a lot, and it's pretty easy now to get to the nest now that we understand them. So it's a great place to do research. Been playing around with camera traps to be able to study the behavior of the birds, just so we can do it. It's tough. We're still in the process of trying to figure out how to do that. Okay, human impact. I wanted to know, what is the impact of birds with tourism in farming? Because if the birds fly or quit eating or don't come in to feed their chicks as much because tourists are around or people are around, that's an impact on the birds. So how do you measure that? And then how do we figure out, well, what is safe for the birds? And then how do we work that into the ecotourism plan? Because you can see here that, like, this is a group from Australia, a bunch of aviculturists from Australia. So we tried to devise a way to measure this. And we're now doing it in Paraguay too. And we're still learning. We're still learning how to do this. But we wanted to see what the bird's behavior was after we approached a cavity or they heard us or we were close or we could see it. So this was our first sample sheet that the rangers filled out. Many of these rangers don't have more than about 6 grades of education. They're pretty smart. They really take on to doing the data. So this is so preliminary. I almost don't even want to show you this graph, but it does show you a little bit. So distance to change. So the blue here shows that they were pretty sure that the humans disturbed parakeets. Pretty sure that happened right here. And you can see it happens all 200 meters or less. But then Where there's no change is the orange. You could be really close to a nest and you can't observe that they see you or had any change in behavior. So it seems to be really variable, but it is pretty clear that over 200 meters, they did not see that they impacted the birds. And so we're still collecting that data. We're still trying to figure that out, what it all means. Okay, so what's recommendations after 4 years of study? Well, we need a lot more analysis and better forums, and we need controlled studies on how, the tourism is impacting the birds. And always, always put the birds' welfare part of any conservation plan, how you handle them, the tourism, studying nest. That's part of what we need to do. And so we're trying to be sophisticated with this project and have it do this. Have we actually written ecotourism into the conservation plan? Well, there was all kinds of community conflict and power struggles and elections and COVID. So things just don't go as quickly as you expect them to. But we're still engaging, and they're going to elect a new chief soon. And so we hope to help the rangers get back on track to being able to do that. And okay, so update 2002-4, we finally got to Brazil to work with partners over there. We had actually got into Brazil a couple years ago, and the indigenous people there, it's Makushi, it's the same people, they were so mad at us. They threatened to kill us and burn our truck because they didn't want us there. And so we learned you really have to get all the right permits. And even then, a particular village can say you're not allowed in. So the people in Brazil have the same problem we do. Even though they're Makushi or they're from Boa Vista, it's really hard for them to get into the villages and study. So we held a workshop actually in Boa Vista, which is not an indigenous territory. So we didn't have to worry about any threats or any problems. So we just went to Brazil and we taught them how to climb trees, and we shared information from the studies. And I've got a video I'm going to show you about that. That was a huge success. We climbed trees and interchange of information. We now have a binational working group. No money for Brazil, but they're very interested, and they're going to work on developing relationships with their indigenous people so they can actually see if there are any leaders that are indigenous that want to do the work, and then work with them. The other thing that's happened in 2024, I told you we had a series of really wet years. Well, not this year, it's El Nino. So it's the first year that we had wildfires in every nesting area. And in one nesting area, this area right here, Karen, this is at James Farm on the river. All the parakeets left. Nobody spent the night. They just went. They left their roosting cavities. Nobody spent the night on their traditional roosting cavities. And here's one nest tree that's actually on fire here. The rangers went and put it out. So we're gonna, the fires have now calmed down. And so we're trying to study what the impact of those wildfires were for a year. So I think it's almost the last thing I have before what are some things we can do, to help the parakeets if we're so inclined, is I have a video of us in Brazil, and it's a Brazilian ornithologist. I hope you can hear it. Do let me know, Amy, if we can't hear it. I thought it might help you feel like you were there. We went to Boa Vista, and they used to have some parakeets there, but they're gone now. So you can just sort of see that video here. I hope it works. Well, the video worked before I turned it on. There we go. Okay, let's see if it works. Oh, now I lost it. There we go. So we're here doing an early morning count outside of our in Boa Vista. We're here working with some wonderful Brazilian conservationists. We're showing them how we count birds. So I'm here with Michelson and Pavani. I send the video you. Yeah, yeah. And we're here with a Brazilian ornithologist, Pavani.
What do you think about being out here at 5:30 in the morning, counselor?
Well, I'm used to that because I'm a guy, but I find that the junction of uh, you, you people and the Brazilian people to try to observe the solstitiales will be great. And I hope that in the future we can do something together.
Great. I hope so too.
Yeah, because we lost a bit of this bird, so we used to have them on the switch here.
Oh,
But
okay.
we can see them since October last year. I can't see them anymore. So it would be great to learn how to do this concept.
Mhm.
That we can do that on the city, in the city, to see if we find again the Arachinga.
Yeah, I was so surprised to hear how many of you all involved as were tracking those two groups at Sun Parakeet.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I was
people.
talking to the teacher, not to the doctor of
Uh-huh.
the university, Wonderland.
Uh-huh.
And we were trying to do something like that. I suggested to him to do a content here
Uh-huh.
in exactly you now. We we can do that much better. I don't know if he knew how to do it,
Mhm.
but it will be excellent to learn here, and then we can do. We know more or less on where the species stay, but we can see them anymore. So it would be nice to get people training people
Mhm.
as we're doing now,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then after we can see if they are here or not, because along these birds. And let's see what's going to happen. We keep you informed there.
Thank you. Yeah, we have our, we formed a little update the video. But if you're okay to post this on social
Oh,
media,
yeah,
that'd be
you
okay.
should.
Okay, okay, okay.
And show it to a lot of you all. Uh, so kind of wrapping up, if there's some take home messages or things that I'd like to share with you all is that there are people, not just in Karasabai, but the group over in Boa Vista, they only had 6 parakeets over there, but people were following them. They really, and they're so sad that they're gone. They don't know why they left. So they're people are really trying to protect their parrots and their culture and their spirit. They want these sun parakeets around. And this is the parakeet rangers about ready to go out on a 2-day counting trip along the river north of Karasabai. And I asked them before they left, I said, why are you guys doing this for the parakeets? And Ken here, he's from the village of Riwa. He said, I need the parakeets. I need freedom. So he sees the parakeets and it's freedom. And he needs the freedom and he needs for them to be free. And I hear that message not just in Guyana or Suriname or Brazil. I hear it all over. The people teach me what they want. They want their birds to be free and they want to be free. And so that's why we've taken on the saying that no one is free until all are free. This is a young yellow-naped parrot in Nicaragua that was rescued and then re-rescued from a home that wanted to keep the bird. And the people there, the conservationists there, said, "Nope, we're going to raise this bird and release the bird," and it was a successful release. This is not the way you want to release birds with your hand. No, it's not exactly the way to do it, but that's what they did, and the bird did fine. So the reality of these people wanting their birds to be free and themselves to be free, this is a whole nother effort and a whole nother presentation about the challenges in these countries and in our own country. That there's this idea is okay, conservation projects are great. It's really fun doing that stuff in Karasabai, but we really need a huge change. And this is what they call as transformative conservation. It's where we have an inner change about how we relate to birds, and then an outer change for the society. So we have employment. We don't need trapping or poaching. We're not taking down forests to put soy in or whatever. You all know all the problems out there. And so the idea in conservation is to say, well, we need to change everything, but we're just conservationists. We're just villagers. You guys are just parrot club members. How are we going to do this? Well, it's tough. And So we just try to do in all of our practices is saying this moment could be a moment of transformation about how I relate to the birds and how we want the world to work. We don't know about final outcomes, but we know that things need to change, and we want to be the change we wish in the world through every conservation measure that we do. So one thing that One Earth does is in our conservation practices, but we have programs too of helping people connect to birds and help whatever transformation they need to do about how they connect to birds. And so we got a book in press, Birding for Life, you know, how practices and theory about how we can connect to birds, and the science and studies going on around about how good birds are for us. But you know, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? So there we go. This is Cater Falls in Guyana. It's the longest drop of falls in the world, and it's quite beautiful. And I was there with Mark Karen from Foster Parrots, and we saw pair red and green macaws flying in and around the falls with the nests on the cliff walls, presumably safe because it's kind of hard and scary to get there. It was quite the show. And so when we, you know, protect the birds and help people where parrots are, the people of Guyana, keeping birds where they are, it helps preserve their ecosystems because birds are feed dispersers. It protects their spirit. It gives them jobs for ecotourism. And so in a way, we're trying to do transformative conservation of how we relate to birds and how we can help people where they are have sustainable livelihoods so they can protect their birds because they want to protect their birds. So I was visiting a village in Guyana, and actually this happened when I was with Danica from Foster Parrots. We were showing them all about how the birds are going extinct and how they end up just filling up sanctuaries all over the world, but especially in Europe and the United States, and how people will spend $15,000 for a scarlet macaw, where somebody in Guyana maybe makes $20 selling it. And so we were telling all this story, and one Indigenous person said, they come to take what is ours to make it theirs. Kind of an old story of colonialism in many of these countries. And so I hear that message from people that are from the areas where the parrots are, that they don't want people to take their parrots. They want them to fly free. And so it really compels a lot of us who work in conservation that it's time to give back what we took. And I say we, I mean just, you know, people. That was never ours. So it belongs to everybody. And so that's a lot of the motivation of conservation is helping, you know, people care for their spirit and their hearts, their livelihoods in their forest, by helping them not let people take what is theirs and let it be theirs. And we want to give back to the world. So it really inspires me on my best days to say the harm must stop. But usually I'm shouting it or crying it or stamping my feet. It's just got to stop. And it's hurting so much, the trade. And in Suriname and Guyana, it's legal to trap and export. And in French Guiana, it's legal to hunt parrots. So it's kind of a rough area, that Guyana Shield. So we put together a scientific review about all the different levels of harm that happens to all of us, you know, from eggs in the wild up to sanctuary people. And then how we can reduce that harm even in countries like Suriname where they allow it to happen. So we really feel that the harm must stop. And this is a family of red and green macaws in Paraguay. It's a chick. You can just see how the kids just love this, right? So the work is that's by listening to the people. I think we need to stop that noise. By listening to the people who live in these countries, you know, they're telling us stop the demand. Let's not have birds in cages. Let's stop the trade. Again, some of the messages that we're hearing from the people where the birds are, and put the parrots back. And this is not something that's going to happen overnight or even maybe this century, but it's a sense that families want to help families. And that's sort of the aim of a lot of our conservation efforts, because that's what we're hearing from the families in these countries where we work. So what can you do? Well, you're probably swamped with everything you're trying to do. Save a parrot, save a people, save a planet. So you can share the information and stories on our website and many others. You can learn about parrot welfare and the conservation status. We say don't buy parrots, don't feed the demand, adopt, volunteer, and donate. And speaking of donating, thank you very much, Parrot Club, for your donation today to One Earth. I really appreciate that. We can earmark that for the sun parakeets if you'd like, if that would help you all feel good. If you want to learn more about parrots, sort of from a spiritual reflection point, we have a parrot pilgrimage every year in Nicaragua, where we wear ourselves walking around the island and we see hundreds of parrots. It's a place where the yellow-naped parrot is still in fairly good numbers, very threatened there, but a group is really protecting them. So we'll be doing that again in December. We have the International Alliance for the Protection of Parrots. It's a group where we clearly say, stop the trade, stop the demand, no more birds in cages. And it's to support people where they are in the countries where they are, with resources and support for whatever they want to do with that. Maybe they don't have the message of no birds in cages, but they definitely say no trapping of young birds, or they might say this and they might say that. So we help people where they are, and with materials and etc. We also have the Parrot Conservation Court. It's not open right now. We closed it. We have 51 participants from Africa, Europe, Central, North, and South America. We don't have anyone from Asia yet. Bilingual is English and Spanish, although we do have Portuguese and Swahili in there, but we can usually make do with English. And it's a way to help people help parrots where they are, giving them the tools and the knowledge and a little bit of money for stipends, and to have a parrot project where they are. And we might be opening up that again. And it's a way for people from North America and Europe to be in solidarity with the people where they are, to help them do the kind of conservation they're doing. And we put out this call for this parrot conservation course, saying that the call is urgent and requires courage, knowledge, and compassion. And we asked, will you answer the call? And we got 51 people that have answered the call. It's very intense. We're with them several times a month in helping them do their projects in many different languages. So we need heroes for transformative conservation. I hope you got to see some of the hero work for the people, the parakeet rangers in Guyana. And you guys also are heroes for showing up today and listening to me chat on for parakeets for about an hour. And so I really appreciate y'all listening to these stories and my experiences. They may not be yours. And so I would really look forward to hearing your experiences now. If we have time to do that, and any questions or comments, it'd be great to hear from you. These are hyacinth macaws in Paraguay. So thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Well, thank you so much, LoraKim. This is wonderful. We do have a bunch of questions. So I think maybe I'll ask you to stop sharing so we can see people on the screen. This was an excellent talk. I did put in the chat a link if you want to donate to this fabulous work. You can just go straight to One Earth Conservation. There's a link for you to click on there. Oh, I just have to, by the way, I took this background photo from the One Earth Conservation site, so I shamelessly borrowed it for this meeting. I want to point out something. It's interesting because sun conures are one of really the most beautiful birds in the world. Brilliant yellow, green, and orange. And then look at them in a native tree. If they're not moving, they would blend right in. And you wouldn't think a bird these colors would blend in. And it just goes to show. I found the same thing in Australia, like with these little red rump parrots that are brilliantly colored, but when they're walking around the grass, you can't even see them. So, because people always wonder, isn't it unsafe for a bird this color to be this color? Aren't they going to get picked off by predators? But you can see how they blend into their own environments.
There's something else about predators, Lori. They don't ever shut up.
I think you all know that.
I know, but in the wild, what is such a small bird doing, so brightly colored, way up there in the blue sky, and they they just talk the whole time. So there has to be some benefit to the sharing of information and the community formation that makes it worth all that knowledge that's going back and forth, because we know they're sharing information. But it does seem kind of incongruous that such a small bird would be so out there with their talking.
Right, and doesn't that attract predators?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Amanda posted a question. Well, now Amanda has sun conures, so I'm glad she came here today. Yeah, I think you have. Well, last I knew you had two. I don't know if you have any more of them. She has other conures too, but
Oh,
she
yes,
said,
I've got two green cheeks, one sun conure, and one Jende conure. They're all talking right now.
Hey, Amanda, good to see you. Kind of see you.
Oh, yeah, me too.
she wanted to know do other species like the gendays also face similar threats?
I don't know much about this. So again, we'd have to get on Google and IUCN website, but I was talking to a researcher that studies Gen days. Oh, I don't know, about 6 months ago. And they're really worried about them. Similar pressures, maybe not so brightly colored almost. So, but they are seeing reduction in numbers, and they don't know how they breed either. And so they're thinking it may be like the sun parakeets, just kind of that crazy communal cooperative breeding and an extra pair coupling. So they don't know. And that's extent of what I know at this point about Gen days.
Do we have cameras in any of the nests now?
We don't know what's going on inside. We're just learning to climb the trees, and of course we have trouble with batteries and money for doing all of that, et cetera, but that's a really great idea to get an idea of behavior.
And interestingly, we do know that there is occasional crossbreeding between the suns and the gendays. So there's always a question of how far are they actually off genealogically from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, you mentioned earlier about predators. Who predates the sun conures?
The sun parakeets. We have not, seen evidence of adults predated. We had one adult remains at the bottom of a nest. Don't know. Falcon hit it. Don't know. A possum went into the nest. But if they're like other cavity nesters, everything eats them. Everything, because the snakes get in, the boa constrictors get in, the possums get in, the iguanas get in, the forest falcons go into the cavity, the woodpeckers, the toucans go in. So we don't know for sure for the sun parakeet, but I would imagine there's a lot of threats there. The one thing really neat about this bird, though, that is different than a lot of other parrots and the kind of nest cavities we have, they're really small entrances. So that is keeping out a lot of potential predators. Where like some of the Amazon parrots and the macaws, they've got cavities like this. So almost anything can go in. It's harder. It's harder with these really small cavities. A possum can't get in that.
So it's really fascinating when you talked about the roosting and the breeding. So let's say you have a nest that has 5 baby sun conures, and there's a parent while the other parent is getting food. And then at sunset, suddenly all these other sun conures come and just start jumping the nest and with the babies, and there's just like a big ball of sun conures in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the trappers tell us that they hang onto the side of the cavity, that they're not actually down on the ground with the chicks, that they actually hang on the side of the cavities. And I've heard that from other similar species. I think it was from the purrs and maybe the red-shouldered macaws, that there's some sense that maybe they're hanging from the sides, but we don't know.
That's a camera would be great.
Be really fun.
Maybe if we get enough people to donate, we can get some cameras in there to find out what these birds are doing. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you mentioned about this lodge. So, and of course, your walk around Nicaragua. Where can people, if people want to go to are these lodges or this lodge, is it up and running? Where could people go to find out more if they want to go down there to see the parrots?
There is there's 2 Facebook pages. They're they're both struggling. One is just look up sun parakeets, and the other one is look up kisi, because kese is the Makushi word for sun parakeet. and you can try to contact them through the Facebook pages. Their internet is really, really tough. So the way most people get to go see the sun parakeets is they contact a birding guiding group in Georgetown, and they go in with an arranged tour. That's how most people are seeing the sun parakeets. If you know me or Karen or anybody, we'll give you their number, and you can just send them a WhatsApp message, and you can arrange your trip directly. So get on our website. In the Nicaragua pilgrimage tour, our partners host it, but we help them, and we go. Just go on our website and sign up and email us, and we'll put you on the list.
Okay, yeah, I know I get emails about the Nicaragua. Okay, fascinating. Do you think they're going to be building up the ecotourism more in the future?
I believe so. The lodge, I was actually the first person to ever spend the night in the lodge that was not Guyanese, and that was just, well, that was not that long ago. I think they're getting more organized. They're maturing in their community structure. Governance is one of the biggest things that stops conservation, is community governance, how they arrange and organize themselves. So it looks like it's getting better there. And like I said, every week they tell me about somebody who's come to visit them. So I think so. And they're actually having people stay at the lodge this weekend.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic.
I hope so. We hope to continue to partner with them and encourage that. And we allow them to use the project boat for tourists, because getting on the rivers where you can really see the birds. And so the rangers pocket the money for themselves, and then that some of the money goes for paying for boat repair.
Is there any sort of clay lick equivalent there to places like Peru and Ecuador and Bolivia where you can go see the parrots on clay licks? Do sun conures go to clay licks at all?
Don't know. They've seen some parakeets down in the falls on the river on the rocks drinking. So we know they come down to the ground to do that. And I've seen the parents drink water and then turn around and feed their juvenile fledged birds right there on the riverbank. We've got some pictures of that. That's really cool. I nosed around a little bit one trip down there, and there are some villages that have clay licks or springs where macaws come in and Pioneer's parrots come in. Nothing like what you're thinking about with Peru. And in the forested areas, I don't know any, but if you want to see a lot of parrots, go to a village fairly close to Karasabai called Riva. They haven't been trapping parrots there for over 30 years. So you can see a lot of parrots there.
Wow,
A lot of macaws too. Get out on the river and you can see that.
So we had a question about how do we lobby the countries that still allow trapping and exporting parrots to end that practice. Before we answer that one, I just want to clarify what the legal status is in terms of trapping, killing parrots in Guyana, Brazil, Suriname, that area, because each country, I assume, has their own laws. I was a little bit unclear about where it's allowed and where it isn't.
Okay, so in Guyana, you can trap and export Guyana said you cannot do CITES 1, but you can do any CITES 2 trap and export.
Is the sun parakeet a CITES 1, I would hope? There's so few.
No, I think it's a 2.
Really?
And so in Guyana, they have said you cannot trap the sun parakeet. But I asked the government authorities, where is that written down? And they can't find the law. So it's just kind of they just, we should leave that bird alone. In Suriname, anything can go, and they also trap and export scarlet macaws. They do not adhere to CITES. They do the CITES 1 bird. They do allow the macaw to get out. Right now, there's a temporary ban in Suriname they're lifting it though, for the mealy, the blue and yellow, and the red and green, but they're still letting the scarlets go out, and they're like almost gone, right, from Suriname, because they allow them to go out. So they put a temporary ban on, because what's happened, or what they're realizing, is one, they don't have any counts to prove whether it's hurting the birds, and the birds are almost gone from the coast in all 3 of those countries where there's a lot of people. What they're finding out, and what we know anyway, is that the birds from Guyana, scarlet macaws, they have to ship them over to Suriname and take them out legally. In Brazil, they'll just ship them over to Suriname and they'll go out legally. So there's this huge illegal traffic going on that's disguised as legal traffic. And they pulled out, they had a shipment of, I want to get this right, 40 Lear's macaws that were in Tongo in Africa this year from
God.
Suriname. And they came out of Brazil, went to Guyana, went to Suriname, and then went to Africa. It's huge. It's huge international thing. And so also in Suriname, in South Suriname, if you are indigenous, there's no limit on the number of birds you can hunt or shoot or eat. But what's happening is, okay, that's okay. So indigenous people, sure. But they're trading them to Brazil and to other countries for the exportation. So it isn't for their own use. And in French Guiana, you cannot shoot macaws unless you're indigenous, then you can. But you can shoot any other parrot for sport. And so people just go up and down the coast with their guns, and you just don't ever see any macaws on the coast. And you barely see pionas and little porpoise things, little parrotlet things, because they allow hunting. And the indigenous people in French Guiana can take all they want.
And in Brazil, legally, are you allowed to kill parrots or not?
Nope.
But as you said, we know it happens. So is there, as Dorian asked, how can we lobby the countries? I mean, is there any way that we here in the U.S. can make any influence on any of these countries or not?
I'm in conversation with partners in Brazil and Suriname about when is it that the international community needs to weigh in. And, they have to tell us, right? The people who are there need to tell us when they're ready for us. Suriname is really close to wanting an international petition and the IUCN to weigh in on the harm of trapping. Right now, Suriname is in the middle of a big broiling on this parrot trapping thing. And so they're still kind of working it out for themselves. But it may mean that we want to do that really soon for Suriname. In Guyana, we're not quite sure. We don't have quite the internal partners to know when we might be making it worse if the international pressure came on. So I'll let you know about Suriname. I'm in touch with folks there about what they think the international community. Sometimes we just make it worse.
Right. In terms of safety, if somebody were to want to go to Guyana to see the parrots, or also in your Nicaragua tour, how safe are these areas for American tourists?
I'd say pretty safe. Guyana is pretty safe. You need to be smart. I don't go out at night in Georgetown. You be smart. It's kind of a rowdy town, a lot of drinking and stuff going on in Georgetown. So you're just careful, but it's pretty safe. It's pretty lovely. Nicaragua, surprisingly, even with all its civil unrest and its dictatorship, is pretty safe. You get in a taxi and you go to the project site and you walk around at night on Ometepe Island. So those are some wonderful areas. Suriname is safe. You just want to be smart. You don't want to be with your phone sticking out and bills of money and walking by yourself at night. You don't want to do that.
Fanning money out, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that. So those are good places to visit. Suriname, Guyana. We work in Paraguay, pretty safe. Do whatever you want there. Honduras and Guatemala are another story. You want to, especially in Honduras, you need to be careful there.
Yeah, Honduras, it seems to be getting worse and worse from reports.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky. And I know that's not part of this talk here, but I just want to mention that the international illicit trade in parrot eggs is just killing us this year. It's always been bad, but it's just killing us this year. They now move eggs. It's a Taiwanese group of people, and they keep catching them and raising parrots and from eggs. And Taiwanese have now been caught 4 times in the last year, bringing parrots into various countries, and they move them as eggs, and it's killing our project in Honduras. We just had 12 nests robbed this past week to take eggs to Managua and then out to other countries. I got a video from the people taking care of 240 eggs were caught in Panama by Taiwanese coming from Managua to ship them out to a flight to Taiwan. And she sent me the picture today. She has 145 3-day-old birds that have survived. And you should see boxes of these birds, and they don't live in Panama. They're scarlet macaws and they're yellow-napes. They can't let them go there. So what's going to happen to those birds? They have no sanctuary service. They have no parrot programs there. So the international demand for parrots, that people want parrots the world over, is just killing these countries, and it's killing birds. And that's one reason why I'm so strong on going, it has to stop. People are dying protecting parrots in our projects. We're losing our parrots, and the people there don't want it to happen. And so that's why I come down so strong on don't buy parrots. Let's not encourage this trade that is just devastating and has been devastating to our birds.
Are most of these birds and eggs going to Asia?
Yeah, that would be my guess. Although, I mean, look at Europe. look at Europe and southern United States. I mean, they're not guilt-free by any means.
No. But at least we do have laws in place that cut down on the majority of them. But I don't think there are any laws in Asia that prohibit importation of the parrot eggs, and of course everything else: pangolins, rhinoceros horns, elephant tusks, and everything else.
That's a really good question. I thought it was illegal in Taiwan to bring in parrots from other countries without permits. But what people are doing is they're faking CITES permits. They just pay off the government and they have blank CITES permits, and they use the same permit over and over again. We know that from birds coming out of Suriname.
Yeah. All right. I've kind of been hogging this. People would like to ask questions, put them in the chat. You can unmute yourself and ask questions.
Comments too. Yeah.
Comments. We had a lot of comments thanking you for the talk.
Okay.
Fabulous talk. I mean, Amanda, if you want to let your sun parakeet scream, you can go ahead and add to the ambiance of the talk. What else would people like to know about these gorgeous, gorgeous birds? Oh, you know what I want to ask is, Mango could certainly do that. How difficult is it to tell a sun parakeet from a sulphur-breasted parakeet in the field?
Well, I've never seen a sulphur-breasted in the field, but from the pictures I see, they sure look like a juvenile sun parakeet.
My understanding is they have a lot less orange. I'd written some articles in the past about, when this first came up with that ornithologist that discussed, because we used to think that these birds were common, and then he discovered using museum studies that there were actually two separate species, the sun parakeet and the sulphur-breasted parakeet, and the sulphur-breasted parakeets are doing fine. For some reason, they're just not as sought after for the pet trade, and that's when we found out that the sun parakeet is actually quite endangered once it got separated out from the sulphur-breasted. I mean, they are I think they're slightly more beautiful than the sulphur-breasted, but the sulphur-breasted are also stunningly beautiful. So I'm a little bit surprised they're not as desired in the pet trade.
I guess I heard something about their eye ring is a little different, the sulphur-breasted.
Yeah.
The sulphur-breasted,
it's not white, so the eyes don't pop as much.
The sulphur-breasteds are hard to get to.
Yeah, they're in Brazil.
Yeah, they're in a very isolated, remote area. I think they're kind of hard to get to. And they're also in Suriname, and it's really hard to get to them in Suriname.
So that's what's protecting them.
Maybe, yeah.
Interesting. We have someone from Mikabu said, can we regroup to determine how we can help the Panama situation?
Yeah, so I'm in contact with the government authorities that are raising those birds, and a number of people have told me, how can we help? How can we help? Veterinary care, sending, powdered, chick food. They haven't said anything yet about needing anything, but I said, just let us know people are ready. And so if I know, go ahead.
Can we fly them to Guyana or Suriname, wherever we want? Just fly the whole group and let them be rehabbed and eventually released there.
The problem is government authorities not allowing, and the CITES permits, and there's a group that's in California, it was the group of eggs from the Taiwanese of yellow napes and red lords that were caught in Miami. They're still stuck in California, trying to get them back to Honduras and Nicaragua, and the governments just can't seem to figure out to do this. So those birds are still here. It's a year later. So I don't know. I talked to the Panama person, and they pretty much have to go back to Nicaragua.
Mhm.
And how are government relations with most countries in Nicaragua right now? We have a dictatorship, so it's very fraught. It's very fraught, and we're not sure. I'm going to say this out loud, but we have to be suspicious of many government authorities that allow birds to go out. So it's really hard. So I don't know if those birds will ever get out, but as soon as somebody says something down in Panama and says they want help, then we'll get it out to all of you all. We'll see what we can do. And I don't know what we can do to stop the Taiwanese. There's been a huge international investigation that we've been a part of. Interpol's been a part of that. They're trying to get the head guy. And I've been told it's okay to say this. They're trying to get the head guy. But they keep catching his minions that are doing all the transporting. So what kind of pressure can we do? I would say just tell the story. Talk about eggs being, transported and the incredible demand and the incredible loss of life that's happening through the egg trade. That seems like something at least we can do.
Amanda, by the way, she mentioned in this photo behind me how these sun parakeets have dark eyes. That is different because the ones in captivity have a white eye ring. So
Yeah,
that
so are they Gende mixes? Are they sulfur mixes? What are they?
yeah, because the sulfurs are the ones that don't have the white eye ring mix, but the sulfurs don't have all that orange. So it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
It just could be regional differences. Like, my galah looks different from the wild galahs in terms of the eyes. All the wild galahs will have these eye rings with bumps, and mine has no bumps. And I haven't found any wild ones that do have those bumps. So clearly, some differences arise probably from breeding and captivity. But it's interesting because that white eye ring is one of the things that make the sun parakeets so attractive.
I wonder if it's just the lighting from that picture too. I mean, I'm just a thought.
Rebecca says at some point I read the eye ring gets dark with sun exposure. Maybe that's a thing too. So maybe the ones in captivity, they don't turn white because they don't have the sun exposure. That's a very good thought.
We should show pictures of well, we don't need to do it now, but of some of the adult pictures down there. I mean, other ones that maybe are brighter, just to, for fun, to see what we see.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, do we have any more questions? We'll see. Just looking at the chat. You can unmute yourselves and we'll just see. And if not, yes, I see we're coming up on 8:30 already. Oh, amazing info, amazing work. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, this was an excellent talk. I mean, the work you do down there is so outstanding. And of course, the work that Foster Parrots does down there as well. So people who attend our meetings know that I am always encouraging everyone to get involved with conservation work, donate, volunteer where you can. At a very minimum, be aware that your bird is a wild animal. It's not just something that you bought in a pet shop, that your bird is a bird that has wild cousins, and those birds need to exist and they need to be free, and we need to help them because if we don't help them, they're all going to end up going extinct. So it's not enough to just sit back and say, I love my bird. You need to step up and be aware that the wild birds need all the help we can get from them. So I just always want to encourage everybody to get involved with conservation work for parrots. I mean, and go on a trip if you can. I've seen wild parrots all around the world, and there's really nothing more joyful than seeing parrots in the wild flying free. So
It changes you.
it really does. It really does.
Yeah.
Oh, Rebecca, thank you for the talk. I'm really glad to hear this is a sun-focused project now. Yeah, I'm not dissing macaws at all. It just seems like all I ever hear about are macaw conservation projects, which is fabulous, and they need all the help. But it's really nice to hear about conservation projects for other parrots, because other parrots are equally as worthy of our attention and conservation. Jennifer, I'd love to watch this talk on Miss Majority. As usual, this talk is being recorded. It will be posted to our YouTube channel. I will be sending out the link to everyone who presumably heard about this through all the normal channels. If you got it from like a friend of a friend or something strange, then just email us at the Parrot Club, go to our website, and let me know that you want to get a link. But most people usually end up finding a link, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Parrot Club CT YouTube, and every month we post these videos, so you can catch up. You can go spend some time looking at all the great graphics, read the scientific studies in more detail, and all that. Informative, yes. So lots of thanks to LoraKim in the chat. You can scroll through. Alrighty. Well, I think if there's nothing else, I'm going to stop the recording first.